I'm here with Robin Wallar from Lift Church, and it's correct to say that it's in Hamilton and also in St. Catharines, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's great
Meeting at McMaster and at Brock Universities.
That's right, yeah.
Now, I was preparing, and you've recently celebrated your 10-year anniversary.
Yep, that's right.
But when I met you, I was like, okay, there's no way he planted this church, because that means you would have planted it when you were 7. You're a fairly young-looking man. So that is the story, right? You have taken the church after the founding pastor kind of passed you the baton?
Sort of, yeah. I was part of the plant team as
cool.
an undergrad myself 10 years ago.
So when you were 17?
When I was 17, yeah.
How old are you now, just so we're clear?
I'm 28.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I took over 4.5 years ago.
Fun.
After a bit of a transition time, so.
Is that something you knew you'd do growing up? You're like, I'm going to be a pastor.
You know, I've always had a heart for the church, believed that the gospel is the hope of the world, but also had a real passion for engineering. And wasn't sure how to blend those two together as I was going through school.
It's not exactly an easy fit.
Yeah, and it was just funny. The Lord took me on a path that I didn't really anticipate, where I was able to do engineering work and end up leading Lift Church 4.5 years ago. So now, actually, I still do both,
Really?
even though the Lord has blessed our church tremendously and He's brought us an incredible team.
Cool.
So, yeah.
What kind of engineering do you do?
I'm a software engineer now.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't often meet bivocational pastors. I'm also one.
Oh, there you go.
I've always pastored and been a broadcaster at the same time. So that's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
So you say your church has been blessed. Let's get a little snapshot of Lift Church. I think we have some footage that we can show as well while we talk about it. So you've been blessed. Where's the church at right now? How's it doing?
Yeah, so we've grown to 3 services.
Cool.
So we planted at Brock University a year ago, and moved to 2 services at Mac about a year and a half ago, just because we had too many people. We couldn't fit them all in our venue.
Cool.
Which is pretty incredible to have multiple services in the evening right on the university campus. And it's just been incredible. But it's not just the Sunday services where we've seen blessing. It's, you know, my heart is that if we can't see that growth translated into every other area of the church, serving, discipleship ministries, our small groups, and then see fruit grow out of that, then we haven't really done our job. And I think the most encouraging thing for me is that it's not just our big services that are all fancy and the lights and everything that have done well, but also our small groups, also our serving initiatives and the incredible ministries that have come out of it. You know, our men's and women's ministries have blossomed far beyond what we expected. And I think it's the biggest win for me is looking at the leaders that our church is producing at this point.
Very cool. So is Lift affiliated with any denomination? Is it independent?
Since day one, we've been affiliated with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada.
Okay, cool.
And that's where I personally am affiliated.
Cool. So now, if someone were to say, why has Lift grown? We know God is at work. We know that's often the key factor. And then on top of that, there are often superimposed various methodologies. So if you were to tell me, here's what I think, Todd. Here's some of the reasons I think we're seeing growth. What would those be from your perspective?
I can think of 4, kind of just quickly off the top of my head. The first is that university campuses are predominantly unreached. They're kind of like cities with a wall around them.
Right.
Very hard to reach from the outside, but they're full of tens of thousands of people that are hungry for the gospel. So by planting right on the university campus, we're reaching a very unreached people from all over the world. So that's probably the first dimension, is that it's an untapped area of Canada.
Yeah.
The second piece is that is probably shocking, is that we're not doing anything new. You know, the gospel is still the central message that we have. Our job isn't to be innovative with the message. Yeah, the mechanics around that we're being creative with, but I think by being faithful to the gospel, that's attractive to people because the gospel is hope and life. The third piece that I'd identify is that while the lights and the flash is important, and I think millennials in particular value, and they can tell when we care about what we're doing, and it's great for getting people in the door, what has actually provided the growth is the quality of community. By creating a space where people can form real relationships, really get to know each other, challenge each other, and push each other in their faith. And I think the fourth piece is that millennials in particular are a generation that is hungry for purpose. They're hungry to do something with their faith. They're hungry to do something with their lives, even if they don't know Jesus. And so by really challenging people to disciple the person that's next to them, to serve their city, to serve their church, and to develop a sort of a missional mandate on their own life, that's attractive for the world to say, hey, there's a purpose and it can be found in Jesus, and as a church we're going to release you to do that.
Let me dig into something you just said. You said the flash is important. So somebody watching is thinking, how come, man? Like, what does flash have to do with the gospel? So why would you say that the presentation aspect of what a church does is important?
Yeah, I think it's an important part for getting the conversation started. As a church, it's funny, people that have grown up in the church sometimes struggle with us because we have some flash. But people that have never been to a church, they find it very familiar for them. They walk in, they go, oh, this is kind of like something I'm used to. It's in a venue I'm normally at during the week. We rent out usually the restaurants or the clubs on campus. Okay. So it's a very safe space for them to come to. But we don't water down the message. We're not changing the message. But when they walk in, they can understand, okay, I understand what my role here is. And then out of that, it creates space to ask questions. It creates space to go, well, maybe there's something different here. If our method can help start a conversation, and that conversation is actually built on a firm foundation, then there's a real opportunity there.
Most of the people in your church, safe to say, are of a younger set? Like the dominant demographic would be?
The dominant demographic would be university students.
Okay, so for someone watching who has university students, for kids, and their kids are far from God, and they're wondering, how do I even begin the process of introducing that conversation into our relationship? What would be your suggestion to them in terms of a place to start?
I think one of the key places where the gospel has something to offer and to challenge somebody, especially somebody that's far from God, is to say, the gospel is not about rules and regulations. It's not about this systematic form of belief, but about a whole system, a whole mode of thinking where your life finds purpose and finds meaning. And I think if we can encourage people to connect with churches that are going to challenge them, not just in the behavior of their life, but in the very purpose of their life, that there's something really powerful there for people to latch onto. And as people walk away from the church, often what we're finding is because they've found it to not have compelling answers, to not have a compelling challenge on their life, to not have a compelling vision for their life. And so, whereas the gospel, I think, is all of those.
How are you navigating some of the thorny ground where the imperative truth statements of the Bible collide with popular culture? And relativism was a factor when I was church planting 20 years ago. It's much more so the case these days. How do you navigate those muddy waters?
I think it starts from a relationship. Rather than banging the drum on an idea and just holding to that idea independent of relationship, we place a lot of value as a church on forming relationship with people so that we can understand where those questions are really coming from and then work the answer to that question out from the context of relationship. So in other words, we start by earning people's trust rather than just championing the idea. And then from a place of trust, we can have very honest conversations about those challenging ideas, as opposed to trying to champion the idea without relationship.
Right. So a pastor's watching and is inspired by what he's hearing, what she's hearing, and they would like to see the kind of growth that you guys have seen. Are there any tips, tricks, secret sauce that you say, you know what, you could start here, you could start there. These 2-3 things will at least begin the process of changing your church. What would some of those be?
I think one of the big things that we've found, and I don't claim to have all the answers, but is to challenge people. I think sometimes you try to create churches that are creating answers to people's questions, and that's a piece of it. But I think also giving people things to do. I think if we can say, hey, why don't you serve your city? Why don't you start to disciple the person that's next to you? Why don't you step up into leadership and push people into that? Supporting them along the way is one of the best ways that we've found to create churches that are not just growing, but growing in healthy leadership.
Final question, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in this season of your church right now?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is that we've grown very quickly with a very young church, so it's constantly kind of reinventing ourselves. The other biggest challenge is that as we want to plant churches on new campuses, finding those campuses, they're out there, we're building a relationship with them, but then finding leaders that really have a heart for the campus is probably my own personal biggest challenge, is that we want to see churches on every campus in Canada, and finding leaders that have that same heart.
For someone who wants to track with you, where can they find you?
liftchurch.ca, or on Facebook, Lift Church or Lift McMaster, or on Instagram at lift.church.
Very good. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, great to have you. Great to be here.
It's inspiring, right? To hear that the gospel of Jesus still works. It's funny. I feel a little bit like the old guy. 20 years ago, I was sitting on this same stage having this same conversation about planting a church in the heart of downtown Toronto, and I'm very encouraged to sit here today and see that the same old story still works.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin, for coming in.